What's up YouTube, JankyYGO here. My name is Michael and today I'm going to be going over my hope for Exodia, as the deck list is called because it's named after a certain card in the deck, and we'll get over to it. Deck list and what its options are and what you can do with it and all that. So, disclaimer, Exodia, this is not a good deck, and it's not, well, this deck is good in the sense of it's a good Exodia deck. It's not a good, competitive deck. But if you want to play Exodia, in my opinion, this is the way to go. We got one of each piece because they are at one. But even if they were banned or unlimited, I don't think that I would play more than one of each copy anyway, since it actually is the worst card in the deck. 3 Swift Scarecrows and 3 Battle Faders to keep us alive. 1 day of peace that draws us a card and keeps us alive. I'm also playing 3 Pot of Extravagance because besides our 1 day of peace and our Upstart Goblin, we don't actually draw cards on our turn, and we don't need our extra deck. So this is something that that is just a good draw tool to use, because Pot of Desires, we risk banishing our Exodia pieces, and we don't want that. Our whole goal is to win with Exodia, not lose, because we banished our own pieces, and this is one of the best cards we have to offer. Why aren't we playing something like our one copy of Card Demise, you might ask? Well, the problem is with that is if we draw an Exodia piece off those 3 cards we draw off Card Demise, we have to send it to the graveyard, and there's no good way to get those pieces back, especially the head of Exodia, because with the other pieces you could run Dark Factory and Mass Production to add 2 normal monsters back, but with the head you can't really do that. So it's better to run Pot of Extravagance, and yeah, Upstart Goblin. Upstart Goblin is just another draw spell, and we don't care that we're gaining our opponent 1,000 life. In fact, we want it. Pot of Duality works really well with this deck because it helps us get another card, could get us the last piece of Exodia, or another draw spell, or a trap, so that we can continue going off. So, and it still works under Pot of Extravagance because it doesn't draw us a card, it specifically adds us a card. So Pot of Extravagance says we can't draw cards for the rest of the turn after it resolves. This, however, doesn't draw us. So, important distinction. 3 Wabakus, 3 to keep us alive, 3 Yatagarasus, it draws us cards, and if we ever, for whatever reason, run to Spirit, it's another draw too, so that's good. 3 Reckless Greed, I'm not a fan of Reckless Greed personally, but it works well in this deck because every other card in our deck draws. 3 gift cards, it gives our opponent 1,000 life points, or 3,000 life points, but it works really well with Hope for Escape. So if your opponent has at least 1,000 life points higher than yours, you pay 1,000, then draw a card for every 2,000 points difference between your life points and your opponent's. The idea for this card is it was supposed to be a comeback card, but with Hope for Exodia, you give them life points, you pay 1,000, and then you draw a bunch more cards with it. So you're hoping to draw your deck and get through that way. Next up, Jar of Greed. Just draws a card. We need to draw as many cards as possible. And Accumulated Fortune. If the chain link is 4 or higher, you draw 2 cards, and you cannot activate this card if multiple cards and effects have the same name in that chain. So, our extra deck doesn't matter. However, I do highly recommend you run all link monsters because of what this deck can go into in the sideboard if you want it to. But we're going to talk about some things that are very important to the deck and the way you should play this deck if you decide to play it. So, first things first, if you Upstart Goblin, let's say, and then you have Hope for Escape, gift card, set, we're just gonna use those 3 cards as an example. Used Upstart Goblin so they have more life points than you, so that you can use your Hope for Escape. Okay, that's a scenario right now. On your opponent's turn, it is important to activate Hope for Escape first, and then chain your gift card. You need gift card to resolve first, so that you draw more cards. The whole idea of this deck, the skill aspect of this deck, comes down from understanding how the chain works and how you activate cards in certain sequences. For example, Accumulated Fortune says you can only activate as a chain link 4 or higher, and you can't activate this card if multiple cards slash effects with the same name are in that chain. However, it is important to know that if you have 2 Accumulated Fortunes face down and you activate, if your opponent activates a card effect, so that's chain link 1, you activate Jargrade, chain link 2. You activate Legacy of Yatagarasu, chain link 3. Gift card. Uh, then you can activate this as chain link 4, the first accumulated fortune. And then you can activate another accumulated fortune. Because of the way you activated the cards, that's how it works. Because when you activate the second one, when you're attempting to activate it, no cards on the chain are have the same name. So you're allowed to do that, and that lets you draw more cards. So understanding how the chain works is very, very important to this deck. The next thing I need to talk about for if you want to play this deck is that the pieces are the worst part of this deck. The Exodia pieces are your win condition. Yes, you want to get them. Yes, you want to see all 5 as soon as possible. However, if your options are take a leg of Exodia or an arm of Exodia, or take more draw spells, it's usually better to actually take the draw spell over it unless that last piece of Exodia wins you the game. Why is that? Well, that's because they are the worst cards in this deck, and the way this deck works is you're stalling long enough. If the deck is going right, you're stalling long enough in order to win, or and able to basically draw your whole deck. So that is the whole goal. You're going to draw most of your whole deck anyway, and you're going to get all 5 pieces of Exodia that way. So, it is important to know that the pieces of Exodia are the worst part of the deck. Next up, so you see the cards in the sideboard. Those are not cards for the sideboard exactly of this deck. I'm here to talk about what each of these cards can do. So, if you don't have Pot of Extravagance and you are looking to, you still want to build this deck, but you don't have Pot of Extravagance, and that's a little bit awkward, that's okay. Instead, what you do is you play Defense Draw. Now, Defense Draw isn't the greatest card ever, especially with Harpy's Feather Duster back in the mix. You want almost all your trap cards to be chainable, so that if your opponent activates Harpy's Feather Duster on you, you can activate all of your cards in response and still get their effects, and still don't get blown out by Harpy's Feather Duster. But Defense Draw is still a nice backup plan, because the Defense Draw, it stops you from taking battle damage and draws you a card. It's another way to keep yourself alive. It's not as good as Pot of Extravagance, but it still works for the purposes of this. Next up is, we're talking about Ash Blossom. Ash Blossom can ruin this deck. So, it's important to chain the right cards together, and see if your opponent fires off Ash Blossom early. So, if, for example, you're not going to want to activate Hope for Escape first if you have 5 set. You're going to want to activate, your Jargrade, your Legacies of Yatagarasu first, so that those can be negated, because those are less important than Hope for Escape. Hope for Escape is easily your best draw tool in the deck. Next up is a Sideboard Plan. If you're getting wrecked by Ash Blossom, you can side in to Nurse Burn, actually. So, what is Nurse Burn? Well, Dark Lord, Nurse, Reficule, any effect that would make your opponent gain life, they take that damage instead. So, and we also have Bad Reaction to Smochi and Try and Guess to give our opponent life points. Try and Guess is good for the Nurse Burn backup plan because you have a thing for Link monsters. If you end up facing against Zodiacs, you name Xyz. If you end up facing Virtual Worlds have Synchros and Xyz, so you name those. If you end up facing against, I think Dragon Link still has a few Xyz in there, doesn't it? Anyway, there's usually Xyz mixed in with the links and synchros and fusions and all that, there's usually one of those three types that it lists. And on top of that, your whole point is giving your opponent life points. They gain 3,000 and all of that. So why am I not playing this in the main deck of Hope for Escape? Well, personally, I would much rather. It's something you can run as well. You can run this over Pot of Extravagance or Accumulated Fortune if you wish. Those are all perfectly valid options. I just personally like running more Accumulated Fortunes. That's my personal preference. However, what would you side out for Nurse Burn? Well, Nurse Burn has a few different cards in it. So you're not going to be playing the Hope for Escapes. You're not going to be playing the One Day of Peace. So you would take those out. You take Hope for Escape out, One Day of Peace, and maybe some Accumulated Fortunes, and the Exodia pieces. So that'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So about 12 cards you could take out if you want. Throw in the Triad Guesses, throw in the Bad Reaction to Samochi, throw in the Nurse, throw in the Search card. That's exactly 12 cards that you could throw in. And then, on top of that, what you do is you search for the Nurse, you set all your cards, and you reverse burn them, and that's how you win. This is, like I said, this, in my opinion, is still the best way to play Exodia, as Hope for Exodia has had the most consistent results across Yu-Gi-Oh! After power creep and all that happened, and the game got a lot faster. Because Exodia was a real deck around GOAT format. It was either during GOAT format, a little before or a little after Exodia became a real deck, and I think it got a top once or twice here and there throughout Yu-Gi-Oh's history, but overall it's not like the greatest deck in the world. So that is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed my discussion on Exodia and what I think about how on Hope for Exodia and what I think the good theory behind it is. If you enjoyed this video and you would like to see more of it, like more videos like this, comment and like the video. If it is your birthday today, happy birthday, and if you want to send me any cool deck profiles or replays, I'd be happy to cover them on the channel. You can send them to my email at JankyYGO, JankyYGO@gmail.com. And of course, and as always, have a wonderful day.